So some research has come out a few years ago that demonstrated what I would say is a physics reality, so it was obvious to me, that front squats really don't activate your abdominals or your obliques all that much relative to how much trainers always say doing heavy lifts and things like front squats do train your abs. Now, I'm not saying your abs don't do something in regards to intra-abdominal pressure. We'll get into that in a second. But this is mainly increasing the work of your lower back. It's actually not your abdominals that are mainly doing it. That it should be obvious. We don't need a research study. Just stand at the top for a second, Alejandra. For one reason only. The weight is in front of her hips. So center of mass is the center of this barbell, and the line of force is straight down. That line of force is in front of her hips, which means if she were to give into this weight, it would pull her into flexion, which means her lumbar extensors have to work harder to keep her in this position. Same thing with dumbbell and goblet squats. I've heard people, yeah, but what about elite lifters? I'm talking about general populations, because that's what 99% of the trainers who are working with 99% of the clients are. So many people feel this in their abdominals, and they say, oh, I know it works because, I feel it in my abs. Well, what you're feeling is more intra-abdominal pressure. Why? Because we have research studies that demonstrate this as well. When you turn on your lumbar extensors, as a byproduct, you're going to get increased intra-abdominal pressure. So what they say is, yes, but your abdominals have to work in order to offset, this is in a goblet squat or front squat, kettlebell, dumbbell, or barbell, that your abdominals have to work to flex to offset the work of your erectors. To me, that sounds good, but that makes zero sense to me. Here's why. Your abs don't have to do what's already given for free. Your abs do two things. They flex your spine, mainly your rectus abdominis and your obliques. They flex your spine, and they create a flexion moment to resist extension, right? So just because you're not flexing doesn't mean your abs aren't creating a flexion moment to resist the force pulling you that way. Now, what's the weight doing? This is physics 101. To me, it's not really up for debate because it's not opinion. The weight, if she gives into this weight, what's going to happen? It's going to pull you that way, right? It's going to flex you forward. So her abs don't have to work to offset what her lumbar is doing because the weight of the barbell or the kettlebell dumbbell is already doing that for free. This is why the research shows the abs don't really get involved that much. The only time I would see, let's turn you a little more forward now, is where someone gets more abdominal activity, something to the extent of where it would replace abdominal work, and I'll get to why, what do we take from all this? What's the takeaway in a bit? Is if they actively try to drop their rib cage down, which I've heard some coaches teach because they think it keeps you more neutral or whatnot, and if you think that's cool, hey, great, different video for another day. I personally don't teach that. But if you teach ribs down, then of course you're going to get some active, conscious abdominal contraction. But conscious abdominal contraction is not the same as how your muscles react when you just take on weight, because strength training is putting force across tissues. All right, now, yeah, you can rest for a second. Yeah, you're holding that a lot. I told you to pick a lighter weight when we were demoing. I told her to get something lighter, and she's like, no, it's going to make me look weak. Well, there you go. See that?
I feel my back.
Yeah. Oh, crazy, isn't it? Now, what's the takeaway from this? Well, am I saying front squats and goblet squats and with a kettlebell or dumbbell are bad exercises? No. I think goblet squats are great, front squats are great, barbell, dumbbell, go heavy, do whatever you want. Just understand why they work that way and what they're not doing. Here's the main takeaway. Here's why I'm talking about all this. If you are trying to create optimal abdominal strength to have better performing abs to do what they do, which is move you and stabilize you in all three planes of motion, then front squats are not going to give you as much return on your investment as more targeted abdominal exercises, both static and dynamic. That's A. What can they do? They can help you work on some sort of intra-abdominal pressure activity, which can help with stability. If you believe that these bring in more ab contraction, then you may be inclined to use these exercises for somebody who has low back issues, such as a hyperactive lower back muscles because they're maybe in a protective guarding phase. If you do this thinking this is more abs, it's actually going to be more lower back. You take the risk of really flaring them up and magnifying their issue. Now, last point I'll make about intra-abdominal pressure. We have some people say, well, why do belts help, right, if it doesn't bring in your abs? Well, belts actually have been shown to increase weight that you lift when you squat. There's research on this as well. However, if you look at that research, what it will show is that even though belts increase intra-abdominal pressure, they also reduce spinal range of motion by creating some sort of a corset of support. Even though they drastically increase intra-abdominal pressure, they don't have a subsequent increase in muscular activation. If you're trying to say that if you just do these heavy, you don't have to do any targeted ab work or different plank variations or even dynamic spinal flexion stuff, which I think is fine, that claim is false. And nobody can justify that based on the physics and also based on the research.